Good morning, everybody. I'm Pam Cashwell, and I'm chair of the Commission on Inclusion, and I'm going to call this meeting to order this morning. Thank you all for being with us. Appreciate everybody being here. I know we had hoped to be in person, and it just looks like more people were going to be virtual than in person, and so we decided to just stick with the virtual format. So appreciate you all taking the time to be with us this morning. I am going to ask Jordan Hanna, who you guys, I don't think Jordan was with us at our last meeting. Yes, you were. Okay, my bad, Jordan. We have so many new folks coming in, especially now we just met with all the interns this morning who are working with us at DOA. And so lots of young, smart, awesome women. So my bad, Jordan. I'm going to turn it over to Jordan, though, to call the roll. And also, we're going to handle the minutes at the same time. So hopefully you all receive the minutes and you had the opportunity to review those in advance. And so before I turn it to Jordan, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Dean Reimer has made a motion.
Second.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. We have a second. Anybody have any questions? And that was Andrew Spainhour, by the way, Jordan, who made the second. Anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns about the minutes? Okay, very good. Then as we go through the roll call, if you can just indicate that you are present and that you approve of the minutes, that would be super. Jordan, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, Secretary Cashwell.
I am present and approve.
Okay. Glenda Farrell.
Approved and present. Backwards.
Thank you. Crystal Figueroa. Crystal Figueroa. Okay, Michelle Fullerton. Michelle Fullerton. Okay, Alicia Hunt.
Present and approve.
Thank you. Paula Kohut.
Present and approve the minutes.
Thank you. Ms. Lydia Lavelle.
Present and approved.
Thank you, ma'am. Pat Martinez. Pat. Okay. Henry Cruz Reyes. Henry Cruz Reyes. Okay. Miss Barbara Reimer.
Here and approve.
Thank you, ma'am. Christy Smith Foster. Christy Smith Foster. Okay. Andrew Spainhour.
Hear and approve.
Thank you, sir. Cecilia Surratt. Cecilia Surratt. Okay. And Mr. Fred Yates. Don't see him. I do see Crystal has joined. Is that correct?
Yes, Crystal Figueroa, I am here.
And Miss Crystal, we also were approving the minutes from the last meeting. Did you receive those minutes?
Yes, I did. I read them over and I approve.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. That is everyone, Secretary.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Jordan. Dr. Cox, are you okay for time this morning? You're good for time. Okay. So I just want to make sure. I know that Nancy A. Strike from Office of State Human Resources has to get to another matter. So we were going to have her go first, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So I'm going to go ahead and immediately turn it over to Nancy then to give us some updates from the Office of State Human Resources.
Hi, thank you, Secretary. Good morning, everyone, and so pleased to be here today. Appreciate you letting me go first. We have a full day here doing a lot of diversity and inclusion stuff. So we wanted to share a couple accomplishments that OSHR has recently had in the umbrella of diversity and inclusion. But before we get to those, I wanted to do just a bit of shameless self-promotion. We have two upcoming events this month. As many of you know, June is both LGBTQ Pride Month as well as our annual Juneteenth celebration. I have on, I don't know if you can see it, my Pride Month pen here. My daughter was very proud of me when I went out of the house this morning. I was looking pretty dapper. But we are hosting an event, a program, actually this afternoon or this morning, actually at 11 o'clock. And we are having Chuck Wheeler, who is the coordinator for Out South. Out South was formerly the North Carolina Gay and Lesbian Film Festival that was hosted right in my hometown of Durham, North Carolina. It's just a wonderful film festival. And Chuck is going to be sharing the festival's history, talking about how that history celebrates LGBTQ life and builds community, and talks about the film festival's place among other film festivals across the nation. Many of you know that the Durham Convention and Visitors Bureau named Out South a signature event for the city of Durham, and it's one of the highest honors that can be bestowed on a cultural event by the city of Durham. So we are very pleased to have Chuck spend an hour with us this morning talking about that very important cultural event to recognize LGBTQ Pride Month. Next Wednesday as well, this is my last plug for a shameless self-promotion until we get to July, we will be recognizing Juneteenth. So we have very honored to have a guest speaker, Dr. Barbara Krauthammer at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. And she is the author of several books about Black history and enslaved people's history. She's written Black Slaves and Indian Masters, and also most recently a book, Envisioning Emancipation, Black Americans and the End of Slavery. She is very established and known for her work in African American history, particularly in the Emancipation Movement. She recently received the NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Literary Work and Nonfiction, and she is currently working on a book about enslaved women's resistance and mobility in the area of the American Revolution. So that is next Wednesday, and we are very excited to have Dr. Krauthammer with us to talk about that very rich history. And if you're interested, if you haven't received an invitation and are interested in joining us for either one of those events, I don't think Secretary Cashwell, I'm not trying to get anybody out of the meeting early, but we would be pleased to have you. We are very proud to sponsor these events to support the governor's proclamations and his commitment to diversity and inclusion for state employees. So that's my shameless self-promotion that's going on today, and also my explanation for why I got to skedaddle out of here in just a few minutes to double check. Not that I do a whole lot, my staff handles it seamlessly, but I like to think that they need me. So we will scoot over there. On the kind of broader policy front, Secretary Cashwell had asked for a quick update. As you know, both Governor Cooper as well as the Office of State Personnel, Lord have mercy, the Office of State Human Resources. That was the way back machine there. We used to be the Office of State Personnel. And some of you that have been around for a while are laughing because you understand what it's like. The Office of State Human Resources is just significantly committed to advancing diversity and inclusion for state employees. And in that venue, we work on both programmatic aspects like we were just talking about, as well as policy and systemic compensation and structural aspects for state employees as well. So in that broad umbrella of initiatives related to equity and diversity in the workplace, we wanted to share with you two recent accomplishments that OSHR will have for you. And I'm going to make an effort here to share my screen so you can see what we are talking about. And hopefully this will come up seamlessly so you can see a little bit. So I think I'm sharing. Can you all see the information on personal observance leave?
Yes, we can see.
Very good. Okay, thank you for confirming that because I don't see it anymore. So whatever that's about. So we are very happy to announce the establishment of personal observance leave. Governor Cooper signed an executive order 262 on June the 6th of this year. And this is a new bucket of leave for state employees and cabinet agencies and council of state agencies that would like to participate. And it provides up to 8 hours of paid personal leave to employees of cabinet agencies. And the leave can be used for essentially any issue of personal significance or cultural importance for a state employee. So it is a very broad footprint to allow state employees to adhere to perhaps a cultural celebration or a religious celebration or a historic celebration that is not currently recognized as a state holiday. So it is this 8 hours of personal observance leave. It is on our webpage, which is what I'm sharing with you now. We have the executive order as well as a great section of frequently asked questions that are available to state employees in the HR community about this leave. Again, it's a new bucket of leave for state employees that came about because of the recent executive order. But the goal of it is to expand the footprint for state employees so they are allowed to elect to utilize this leave for cultural, religious, or personal reasons. So we already have employees scheduling this leave. Of course, the leave has to be scheduled. It's not exactly like a state holiday, but it is a great stride forward to allow employees to recognize those important, significant events for them. And that is really kind of the bottom line on this leave. Not a lot of states have this. Again, this is a situation where the state of North Carolina and this administration is leading the charge in terms of diversity and inclusion initiatives. We believe that we are a role model here in terms of providing this leave and this flexibility for employees, again, to support the broad range of cultural and religious and historical recognitions across the state. So happy to answer any questions about that you may have. But again, we wanted to make you aware that this is a new opportunity for state employees in the area of diversity and inclusion. Okay. Hearing none or seeing none, I'll switch to the second update that we wanted to provide for you. The state of North Carolina, and if this works well, I may have to see if this works. So I think I just changed to a new compensation system information. Are you all seeing that?
Yes.
Perfect. This is a good morning. So the state of North Carolina has been working for several years with a national consultant to revise and enhance our state compensation system to make it a lot of things. One of the primary things that we wanted to make the system was more tethered to current labor market data. As you know, and I'm sure all of you are experiencing both in the public and the private sector, that there is a labor market talent shortage right now. We are all competing for employees, sometimes with one another. And so having a compensation system for state employees that is sensitive, current, and contemporary is one of the highest priorities for OSHR. So in that regard, on June the 1st, the state of North Carolina launched a new revised and enhanced compensation system for state employees. And this is a really important component to help support, again, also diversity and inclusion and retention, because we as public employers have to be competitive to recruit that talent and retain that talent to the state of North Carolina. I could talk about this a long time. It's got a lot of cool things, but it is kind of wonky. I'll just hit you with some of the highlights that I think stand out about this system and why it's important to help us maintain those employees. What you see in front of you here is some of the system improvements. The state of North Carolina has long recognized that one pay plan is not sufficient for all our employees. There are a lot of different labor markets embedded in the state and for state employees. So what you'll see here is that we are developing revised pay plans for specialized job groups. And some of those that are here are a general pay plan. We also have an IT pay plan because, as many of you know, there's a whole different micro labor market for IT jobs. We have an attorney pay plan, a medical pay plan, and also a brand new pay plan for us with sworn law enforcement. We're having a lot of recruitment and retention issues for our sworn law enforcement positions, and we're doing everything we can to make those jobs as attractive for folks as we possibly can. So that lets you know that this pay plan is designed to be a little more precise in the labor market and survey information that we're presenting. And essentially, the way that the pay plan is going to work is that there is a salary range established, which I'm showing here in this diagram. There's a midpoint of the range, and of course, that range is then divided into quartiles. This allows managers and supervisors to have an easy recognition, as well as state employees, of where they're at in terms of market competitiveness. So if you are a long-term state employee that's in the first quartile, that may be an indication to the agency as well as to yourself that there should be room for some movement in there to get you up to what we consider the midpoint or the labor market point of that range. And so you have this first, second, third, and fourth quartile. Again, the goal here is to make this very transparent and for employees to be very clear, as well as supervisors, where their pay is in relationship to the market. And an example of how that will work for state employees is this is one of our pay ranges. We talked about the general pay plan. This pay plan actually has 30 salary grades in it. And those salary grades then are divided between the first, second, third, and fourth quartile. And employees are given some information about where they are in relationship to those quartiles. For instance, here, if you were in this pay grade, that would be the pay rate for the minimum, the midpoint, and of this pay grade, which is 8, $62,628 is the maximum. So you may be thinking this is really technical. How the heck does this relate to supporting diversity and inclusion? Bottom line is to attract and retain diverse talent to the state of North Carolina, we have to be competitive with the marketplace. We just cannot allow ourselves to fall behind and lag significantly with the marketplace. So the first step is understanding what those market salaries are, and that's what this pay plan is working to do. It is also designed to be transparent with state employees, so we know where we need to work in order to raise salaries or where salaries are okay. And it's also designed to provide managers and supervisors with flexibility to establish salaries that will help attract and retain employees. We have a series of pay plans or pay factors, that a manager or supervisor has to consider before setting a salary, and that will provide that flexibility to some degree. One of those pay factors that is required is internal equity. So state agencies, when they're setting these salaries for employees, are required to look at the salaries of their other employees and make sure that they are not creating inequities within their workplace. So that is one of the driving principles of this pay plan. This new pay plan is to ensure that we are addressing inequities and doing that fairly, and also not creating new inequities by how we are paying folks within the state of North Carolina. So that's a 5-minute tour of a 2-year-long project that our office undertook. We believe that it's got us pointed in the right direction in terms of prioritizing where the largest needs are in state government through this transparency and this labor market data. And again, it's a really significant step. So we have some, 65,000 employees covered by this pay plan, and we want to do the very best by them in terms of compensation, salary specifically, as well as benefits. So we had a busy month of June. We have these programs, we have the personal observance leave, and we have the new revised salary compensation plan. So a lot going on at the Office of State Human Resources, as per usual, in terms of supporting diversity and inclusion initiatives. Again, happy to answer any questions related to that work or any other questions that you may have related to what's going on at OSHR. But Secretary, I will end it there. And again, appreciate the early placement on the agenda so we can share this information with the members of the commission.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I really appreciate your time. Does anybody have any questions for Nancy? So let me just say, this market study, it is such a thankless job for all of those who have worked on that particular project because, it's hard to make everybody happy. People get frustrated because maybe their classification changes such that their minimum is lower, or their maximum is lower, or whatever the case may be. It's a very difficult task, and I really commend OSHR and the staff there for the work that they have done on that project with Mercer, because I know it has been a long, hard road, and that we agencies don't make it easy sometimes because everybody likes to complain about the situation, and you have certain employees or certain classifications that you're concerned about, but they have been very open to hearing our concerns and comments, and it's not perfect, but it is moving us way further in the right direction, way further in the right direction. And I can tell you, I for one am very happy to have it as a tool now to talk about our need in state government for higher salaries. It has really proven to be an excellent tool for that. And so for all the employees who get frustrated about it, my message is always, look, I've been saying we need higher pay for state employees. This now gives us that information and data that we need to really show that we need higher salaries for state employees. So Glenda and Nancy, thank you
Secretary,
both for your work on that.
this is-
Yes, ma'am. Lydia.
This is Lydia. Yeah, I just have a very quick question, Nancy. I really enjoyed that presentation. I think those of us that have worked in any kind of state or local government have recognized all the challenges with all of that. And that is really, I appreciated the way you broke it out now by kind of occupation. I'm sorry if I missed this, but do you know the number of positions we have that are not at living wage position level, or if we have any? I know with the town of Carborough, we went through that a few years ago where we brought everyone up to a living wage position, even our part-timers, which was quite a task because then it resulted in some salary compression and so forth. Do we have those statistics? And if we do, I'm sorry. If I missed it, I'm sorry.
You did not miss it, so you're in good shape. You're in good shape there. And I will let Glenda add on. Several years ago, many years ago, actually, the state of North Carolina addressed the living wage issue when we brought employees up to a minimum floor to be competitive with the market, and that did do exactly what you said. It caused some compression with other positions and state government that we had to address. This pay plan has incorporated a lot of those same market rates. And Glenda, I will defer to you on more details about percentages and metrics if we have those. But I do know that has been a high priority for the state of North Carolina. Again, we were addressing it several years ago when we raised that floor. But sometimes when, as you said, when we saw one problem, we created another, because there were a couple situations where we had employees earning more than their supervisor when we raised that floor. And so then we had to go back and address those situations. But the state is very committed to that. And I think in our lower salary grades, we have very competitive pay rates for state employees, particularly when you look at the total compensation system that we're offering folks. And to that regard, when we talk about salary and the living wage and the work that we've done for that previously, when we were competing, and a lot of that got started with housekeeping classifications when we were having some retention and pay issues associated with those. The other big part that we really talk to employees about, I know it doesn't pay the rent or the mortgage, but is the access to that state pension and the stability that provides state retirees that just cannot be matched in the private sector right now any longer. And so, again, part of that message that we really pushing is the salary, but also the total compensation and benefit package that we're offering to state employees. So, the quick answer to your question is yes, we took that into consideration. Again, I'll defer to Glenda on any numbers that she may have at her immediate fingertips. to highlight that a little bit. But we are always thinking about that, always. Linda, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, our temps are not all at living, what we call the living wage, or we set that minimum wage back by statute session law in 2018 to be 31,200. But, you know, the market data actually shows that when you go NC 01 through NC 05, they're actually the minimum of that range by market is lower than what we're paying our employees. So we are paying much better for those classes that are North Carolina 01 through North Carolina 05, the NC 05 numbers. But hopefully, you know, we'll get some traction where we can get temps paid that living wage as well this year. But there is, you know, there is effort to make that happen.
Great, great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Nancy.
Okay, any other members have a question? All right, very good. Then I am going to, and again, just because I know people have super busy schedules, and I know everybody does, but Christina Espana and Dr. Cox, are both of you okay for time? Okay, all right, good. So then at this time, I'm going to introduce Christina Espana. Christina is new to the governor's office, just hired in May of this year as the Deputy Director for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And she comes to the governor's office having been Vice Consul of Guatemala in the Consulate General of Guatemala's office here in Raleigh. And so Christina, I'd like for you to give us a little bit more of your background, and then also tell us what your plans are for the governor's office, and then give us some updates from the governor's office.
Thank you so much, Secretary Cashwell.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. I will have to start by saying that I'm thankful that we have little computers in our pockets, because I had a problem with my laptop and the Wi-Fi. So having a little computer on our pockets really saves our lives. So thank you for the space. As Secretary Cashwell was saying, I used to be the Vice Consul of Guatemala here in Raleigh. I was here for about 5 years. I opened the Consulate General. Before there was only the Consulate of Mexico, and then we came here in 2017. And now there's other 2 consulates, but they are in Charlotte, and it's El Salvador and Honduras. Before that, I used to be in Atlanta, and I was there for about 7 years. In Atlanta, I used to cover Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Tennessee. And here in Raleigh was North and South Carolina. With my job, I was able to travel to many places. We used to do mobile consulates when we bring our services. And with that, I was able to meet authorities, enforcement, community, local-based organizations. That really helped me have a broad perspective, because I could see the work in different states. And I say this truly, I'm really proud of North Carolina, because things here are done well. And that's why I'm so proud to be here, and it's an honor to have this position. It's a new position. There's 8% of foreign-born population here in North Carolina. And with that, we have to account the children they have and people that are second, third generation. My work will be around resources. First, I need to make sure that our community, the immigrant and refugee community, know about all the great resources that we have. And at the same time, I have to work across agencies to think about, when we think about DEI work, how are we including the immigrant and refugee population over this lens. In regards of that, there's a lot of work that we need to do with language access. I know some agencies, because of the work they did, and especially with COVID, DHHS is a great example of language access. So now that we're in a different level, trying to think how can we include that knowledge they already have in that agency, in other agencies. With that, I started working with OBSM to create a map so we can know where these foreign-born population are. So we're thinking about planning, listening sessions, and also languages. So for example, in some places of North Carolina, Vietnamese is the language that need most language access. And if we go there with everything in Spanish, it defeats the purpose. So that is why having this map will really help us to understand where our resources need to be there. I also need to work on engaging our community and thinking about how can we be a diverse community and thinking about all the voices. I always bring this into every meeting that I am. I'm really, really proud of our Latinos. We are a big number. We are loud. We are a lot, and there's some needs that we have. But at the same time, there's other voices that we need to count in. The African voices, Asians, Middle East. So it's also trying to think how can we include those voices on council members, or when we're taking decisions about the state or local. They might have very different needs, or they might bring a lot of knowledge that we don't know that they are bringing to each place. So that's why trying to think how to bring all of those voices here. With that, there's also a great interest from USCIS trying to push green card holders to become citizens, because that's like the last step of integration. When you are a citizen and this is your country and this is where you're going to stay. So there's great work that we can do with that as well. I'm also going to be working with workforce development, trying to think education, licensing. So with that, I need to work also with the policy team, because that has to do a lot with policy as well. And I'm going to be working as well with webinars. Community-based organizations might not know, because they are like the point of contact with all of these communities, immigrants and refugees. So how can we make sure that these community-based organizations know about what we have? So I'm thinking that a webinar could be a good way to start that. There, like a lot of them know about the resources that we have, but having the space and the time to go one by one. So it will be about workforce development, because these are the priorities of our governor: workforce development, the pandemic recovery, and broadband availability. With COVID, there was a great lesson. Everything was online and everything was on our cell phones, and not necessarily everybody has a cell phone to start with, or access to the internet. So language access, but also digital literacy, how to access those resources from your phone. And with that, we can avoid a lot of notarios or notaries that take advantage of our community, because they don't know that they can access those services by themselves. I'm going to be working with a working group across agencies, so we can share good practices, and also we might have the same problems in all agencies. And with this working group, I want to be very intentional, again, with the voices, trying to get all voices, all languages, all communities into this working group. And also trying to think on sustainability. How can we make this work that we're doing right now that go beyond this administration? So all the changes that we are making will stay and will improve the lives of all North Carolinians. And I would like to share as well that everybody has been really welcome to me. It's a very diverse staff inside all agencies. It makes me a very proud North Carolinian. And I'm looking forward to continue working to bring the awareness that I might bring into different task forces that you have. And please reach out if you have any questions, and I will be reaching out to you as well, because I do need your support to be able to carry on this job that the governor wants me to do. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Thank you so much for being with us. Does anybody have any questions for Christina? I agree with you, Christina. Go ahead, Andrew.
Christina, thank you for that. That was really wonderful. This may be a little far afield, but I was curious if you had any insight into why people who are green card holders who are eligible for citizenship are not applying for citizenship. And is it because of the complexity of the process and the filing fees? Is that why?
That's a reason why. There's the other reason. It's that people are not aware that they will not lose their citizenship from their where they were born. There's a lot of fear. If they have, let's say, businesses back home, or they feel like if they become citizens, they might lose all of that. They might lose that citizenship. So that is not the case. That was changed late 90s. So USCIS is trying to work on a campaign so people know that they will not lose the citizenship, so where they were born. The other one, it's fear. A lot of people have fears of the process. There's some, you might be able to continue legally in the country as a green card holder, but if you committed any crimes, or for example, they stopped you 3 times in a less than 3 years. So the charges are stronger because you were undocumented, you were driving with no license, for example. So you have that on your file. As a green card holder, it might not be detrimental to you, but to be a citizen, it might be a problem. So there's a lot of fear that they might not become citizens and they might end up on removal proceedings. So they need counseling, and as you said, getting the right person to answer those questions and tell them, no, what happened, there's no problem, because a lot of those fears are not real. There was a person that was they had a fear because they didn't register to something, and it was not even a thing, but because they don't talk to anybody about this, it becomes difficult. So yes, having access to counseling, also being intentional of letting people know that they will not lose their citizenship from their home country, and that it's better for them. It's better for all of us because it's the last step of integration.
Thank you. That's really all very interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Christina? So before I turn it over and introduce Dr. Cox, Dr. Hollingsworth, don't kill me, but Dr. Charisse Hollingsworth, who has been working in the governor's office now for, gosh, I don't even know, Dr. Hollingsworth, you were certainly there when I was over at DPS, and she's not a member of the Commission on Inclusion, but she has been very engaged with us, as you all know, and has presented many times on the work that's going on in the governor's office, particularly in this space. And she has been integral for us on the Andrea Harris Task Force, working very closely and tirelessly, particularly on some of our subcommittees with the Andrea Harris Task Force. And so, but Dr. Hollingsworth is leaving the governor's office, and I think might be your last week even. So I really just wanted to say thank you publicly for your work with the Commission on Inclusion, as well as the Andrea Harris Task Force, and give you the space, Dr. Hollingsworth, to add anything else that you want to from the governor's office standpoint. And I'm sure people would love to know what your next journey will be.
Well, thank you so much, Secretary Cashwell. You know how much I admire your leadership and your commitment to a lot of the work that you're doing, and for just how much this commission has been an integral part in learning more about what we're doing across the state, but then also how state agencies can learn from some of your recommendations. So I want to thank all of you for your work. So I have learned a lot in this role in the governor's office. This was a new position, much like Christina's. And so at the beginning, there wasn't really a plan, but I think based on some of the recommendations that agencies have received, we are now at a place where there are DEI leads across our cabinet agencies, and they are all doing wonderful work across their departments. And I think just collectively, we're in a much better place now than we were a year ago, even. So I do strongly believe that it's a team effort to make sure that North Carolina is a more inclusive state, that we acknowledge and respect different cultural backgrounds and lived experiences. And I'm just honored to have been a part of this work. I am a social sciences trained researcher, so I will be transitioning back into the research sector. I've recently accepted a role with American Institutes for Research in their youth, family, and community development program area. So I'm hopeful that there will be some opportunities to continue to collaborate with North Carolina state government in my professional capacity. But please know that although I'm leaving this role, that I will still be involved. And so I expect to still receive a calendar invite from Evan for the Commission on Inclusion meetings. I'm just really hopeful and inspired by what our state has done and what we'll continue to do. Christina, as you've heard, brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to the governor's office. And she knows how much I admire her as well. But just know that I'm just proud of what we've been able to do and what we have moving forward. So thank you, Secretary Cashwell, for providing me the space. And I hate to say goodbyes. It's more of a see you later. But I just want to thank you all so much.
Thank you again. Thank you for your awesome service. I appreciate you, and you know that. Okay, so to the next item on our agenda, I'm really pleased and proud as a double Tar Heel to introduce Dr. Leah Cox, who has about a year, I think, under her belt at UNC Chapel Hill. I think you're creeping up on a year. And Dr. Cox was named the Vice Provost for Equity and Inclusion at UNC Chapel Hill, as well as the Chief Diversity Officer about a year ago. Prior to that, she spent 4 years as Vice President for Inclusion and Institutional Equity at Towson University, and also worked for 6 years as Special Assistant to the President and Chief Diversity Officer, Title IX Coordinator, and Campus Ombudsman at the University of Mary Washington. So she has over 25 years working in this space of advising, developing, and consulting on programs for underrepresented students, faculty, and staff. She also spent 10 years at Gallaudet University advising deaf students, and I've heard all great things. I serve on the ACRID, which is an alumni board over at UNC Chapel Hill for racial and ethnic diversity, an advisory board there. And so all good things about the work of Dr. Cox in her first year. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Cox, to talk to us about the DEI initiatives going on at UNC Chapel Hill. Thank you for being with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Secretary Cashwell. Thank you all for inviting me. So as you've just heard, my work and lived experience has been in higher ed for a very long time, with a variety of populations, institutional sizes, public, private, all of the above. And so I appreciate you all inviting me to come and talk with you today. I'm going to share my screen if that's possible. So let me see if I can make that work. Okay. And hopefully you see what I see, because WebEx is a little bit different than the platform I'm used to using. So let me just say that, yes, I am creeping up on a year. I will have spent a year at UNC somewhere in mid-July. So this has been quite a transition, an interesting year for me here at UNC. But I think it's the place that I was meant to be. It's exciting. There's a lot going on, but there are a lot of great things going on at UNC that I didn't even know about when I arrived, even though I thought I'd done the deep dive in the research of the institution. Once I got here, there was a lot going on that no one seems to know about, unfortunately. So there's a lot of good work going on. I just wanted to share with you the mission of my office, which is all about providing university-wide leadership and best practices and strategies across the institution. So it's not just for one of our schools or one of our units, it's for the institution at large. And it's also about positioning us to fulfill its mission and educating a diverse student body, and aspiring to attract and retain not just students, but our faculty and staff, but also providing an understanding of the principles to promote equity and inclusion, and now belonging. So I think that those are all very important as we look at what we're doing, and then enriching the experience for all the members of our Carolina community, whether it's incoming or prospective students. We have a 50-year-old program that brings in students from all across Carolina. It's our Project Uplift program, and it's about making sure that those students have an equitable access to Carolina, that they understand what the mission is here, that we're welcoming, that we're trying to be inclusive, and that we want them to be a part of our community, working with our current students, and all the initiatives that we are bringing, and then with our faculty and staff. It's a big institution. There are lots of folks working here that we are trying to make sure that we're inclusive, but also promoting equity and belonging. And then also, as Secretary Cashwell talked about, ACRID, which is one of our alumni organizations that's focused on equity and diversity, but other individuals across the institution, the community, the state, and the country who have visited, been a part of the community, studied, graduated, whether they're a double Tar Heel or a triple Tar Heel. We want to make sure that we are reaching out to them. And so how do we do it? Resources, we provide a lot of resources for individuals across this campus, whether that is education, training, just research, all of that. Training and education, I was able to hire some folks this year as I came in who will continue to do the training across the campus. Initiatives, special programs, support. We provide support not only for those on campus, but off campus also. And outreach to the community, to our alums and everyone. At the end, what I'm pushing all members of our community to do is to evaluate what they're doing. We need to see the data and the metrics to determine, are we moving forward? Are we succeeding? So just before I got here, or a little bit before I got here, there was a DEI council that was created by our chancellor and other administrators on campus, to look at best practices and structures of the institution, our schools, our colleges across the campus. So since I've been here, we've really started pushing, develop some subcommittees, which I'll talk with you about in a second, to take a deeper look, a deeper dive as to what's going on here at Carolina. And what I'm asking for is data and information. So we have a university policy and equity review, and we just published the first report about 2 months ago, to look at all of the policies, or all of our administrative policies right now, over 1,000 policies, to do an equity review. What does that do? That looks at the language. It looks like at the reading level. It looks like, are we being inclusive? How old are the policies? So things that we found, as many of you may know or not know, that some of the policies in our institutions, and that's not just higher ed, but in our state institutions, the reading level is above a 13th grade reading level. Some were at a 16th grade reading level. And as you know, there are folks across our campus who may have finished high school, may not have finished high school, don't have a college degree, but are held responsible for those policies, right? And so we can't say that we're being equitable if we are not providing policies that everyone on our campuses and institutions and state organizations can actually read and then follow, right? We have policies where the language, the gender inclusivity is lacking. Some policies hadn't been reviewed in some time. So we are now moving to do this with all of our schools. So we've done this and then produce the report so that offices and units could see where they are. And now we're going to move to our schools to help them review some of their policies using an equity lens. One of our subcommittees is looking at all of the data and metrics for students across campus. So that's recruitment, retention, and graduation rates. Where are we? What are we doing? And we're looking at it in multiple ways. And then the same for faculty. But we're also looking at tenure and promotion. We recognize that there are some inequities, but we need to see where they are, right? We don't want to just make the blatant statement that it's inequitable, but where do we need to do better? We're looking at community engagement and then organizational development and leadership accountability. We want to make sure that all of the work that we're asking all of our faculty and staff to do, that our administrators and leaders are doing the same work, right? We don't just expect others to do it, but we lead by example. We're also doing a climate survey that's going to bring in more numbers, more data, and more understanding of where we are being inclusive and where we have some deficiencies that we need to work on, and is there equity across our campus. So we're going to do everyone. We had attempted to do students in the spring. We've moved it to the fall now, and so all faculty, students, and staff and administrators will do a campus climate survey, and then we'll share the information with the campus. We also have a lot going on in our schools and in some of our centers. So we do have a Center for Faculty Excellence, and they do a whole program in equity in teaching. It's the Equity in Teaching Institute that works on how do you make the class, the course that you are teaching equitable. What do we need to do? Are you looking at your syllabus, the curriculum, the resources that we're providing students? How are you teaching? Inclusive teaching at Carolina is also another course that our center provides. Targeting equity and access to mentoring. There's a mentoring called Team Advance that they work with individuals, faculty across the campus to talk about equity and access. And then we have the Women's Advanced Leadership, which talks about moving women into administrative level positions. We understand that a lot of times, not just here at Carolina, but other places, the women don't get the same opportunities or the same looks as our male counterparts. And so we're helping women to get to those administrative higher level positions. The School of Medicine has a Rising Star program to increase faculty diversity. We recognize that there are doctors across the system, across the nation, that are not diverse in our hospitals, in our centers, in our urgent care places. So how do we work with them? How do we move our students to become doctors? DEI trainings and certificate programs are taking place in the School of Medicine. And then we have Black Men in White Coats series. So they bring in doctors from all over the place to talk about their experience, their rise to where they've come, and how do you get there? What do we need to do in the Gilling School? And I'm sure Dr. Reimer could talk about it. They have Emergency Preparedness, Ethics, and Equity series. It's been going on for a while now, but it touches, and I just highlighted one of the talks. There are lots of different topics that they engage in throughout the year. And then there's inclusive excellence trainings. In many of our schools now, we are asking all of our faculty to do a certain number of courses or trainings throughout the year so that we can make sure that they are progressing but staying a part of the game that's needed. It's not a one and done for diversity, equity, inclusion, understanding, and trainings and education. So we're asking them to do some continuing education, as we all do. In human resources, as we look at more staff, there are lots of professional development and organizational programs that are happening. You lead is one where we engage over 24 individuals across the institution to help them begin looking at, how do I move up? How do I move up in the organization? What do I need to do? What are the skills? We also have a variety of training courses. Some have been, at this point, because of COVID, virtual. We're starting to lean more again towards some in-person trainings to help folks move up, gain the skills they need, do some professional development so that they can move into higher level positions. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. And hopefully, there we go. All right. So we are doing a lot of things. One of the things that I think is important that all of our institutions and organizations do, systems do, is to look at the data, right? It's important that we collect the data to tell us the things that we don't know, maybe some things that we do know, but how to improve. And if we're not doing that, we're remiss. Is there a dashboard? Sometimes, not always. But there's certainly a way to keep track of all of those things. So in some of our schools, and I'm about to ask all of our schools to produce an annual report. What are we doing? Where are you going? Once we have pulled out all of the data and the metrics to share with them, are we moving the needle? We do get reports from some of our schools. We're going to be looking at asking for all of them. We also have our strategic plan, Carolina Next, which all of the units that are involved in those goals have to produce a yearly report to show the institution where we're going, what we're doing, have we accomplished some of the goals that we set out to achieve. And so that report is shared with the entire institution. So that folks begin to see where they are, what they haven't done, and what they need to do. So we are trying to make sure that we are moving forward. It's a big job. I can say that for sure. But I think that it's important that we continue to not just do programming, but that we look at, is it effective? Does it make a difference? And I can say that some programs will, some programs may need some tweaking, and we know that because times change. And COVID has forced us to change, right? So even as we look at keeping some of our faculty and staff on campus, we also recognize that there are things that they can do remotely. And one of those is part of, being equitable, but also retaining the staff who seem to be exiting our institutions and systems quickly. So I am happy to respond to any questions that you may have, or thoughts or suggestions.
I see lots of shaking heads, so I'm going to open it up for questions. Any members who have questions or comments? Alicia.
Thank you, Dr. Cox, for sharing all that information. I'm at ECU currently, and I work with our committee on DEI with our division here. One of the things that we've implemented based on COVID and DEI practices is adding a part in our annual evaluations for our faculty and staff to do 3 trainings outside of what's free for an institution, and that's part of a conference or CU, something virtually or anything like that. And so that has been really well accepted across our division. So we're hoping from a university standpoint that can be implemented, but I'm definitely interested in the more information on the U Lead and also the women program as far as like moving up within the institution, because as a BIPOC working in higher ed, sometimes we don't have mentors that look like us or kind of have taken paths or things like that. And so it's sometimes hard to find a person that is willing to be a mentor or a mentee and kind of guide us. So I'm definitely interested in some more information on that.
I am happy to send it to you, but yes, so the U Lead is an employee program, so staff program. You can apply, applicants are accepted and then evaluated and then selected, because they only take 24 a year. And then it's a year-long program where they're learning a variety of different things, but also they're assigned a mentor, right, who will work with them. And you are correct, Alicia, that oftentimes, and it's not just in our staff, it's also in our faculty, finding good mentors who understand and are willing to be inclusive in their work with you is sometimes difficult at some of our PWIs. And that's just the reality of it. So finding good mentors is important. I also tell folks, don't just rely on those who are at your institution, right? There are others outside of your institution who can give you great support, guidance. They can show you where the red flags are, and help you get down the path. And I tell the same to our graduate students as they are walking that path to their master's or PhD, right? Yes, you have to have those within the institution, but don't discount those who are outside of your institution who have walked the same walk. The Women's Advanced Leadership is really interesting. And I've only been here a year. I've presented to them twice. But it's a great group of individuals who meet monthly, and maybe a little bit more than that, to talk about a variety of issues in higher education. But they work closely with the leaders in the Center for Faculty Excellence as they progress through the various stages and topics that they have laid out for them, to look at advancement opportunities. And again, sometimes that's where we fall short at some of our higher ed institutions. There aren't always those positions open, right? And so we train them up and then we lose them. And sometimes I hope they come back. So.
Thank you for that.
Barbara.
Reimer.
Yeah, I wanted to thank Leah for speaking. I think you've brought so much to our institution, and the focus on metrics is so important because we can think we're making a difference, but you know, if it's not showing up in what we can measure, then we have to change what we're doing, right? So I think you've really added a lot in that. And I wanted to say to Alicia that we now require 8 hours of training a year in inclusive excellence, and that's for everybody, faculty and staff. And Leah mentioned some of what we're doing, and all this week we have sessions on inclusive teaching that, you know, we've got really great participation, and you know, we can all learn something new every day, right? And seeing some of the issues around having hard conversations on race, equity, and inclusion, you know, people are struggling with that, and I think we're doing a better job of having those conversations. But I was glad to see what you're doing at ECU. Thanks.
And Barbara has brought up one of the initiatives that my office is going to be putting out come this fall, which is Intergroup Dialogue. And I have two folks right now sitting in training at University of Michigan as they are preparing to bring it here, bring it to Carolina, where we are training facilitators to help with those very difficult conversations in all of our schools and all of our units. So we will start training 20 this fall, 20 facilitators across the campus, to be ready to step into those spaces to facilitate those conversations. So we know that it's difficult, especially when we're talking about race, gender, religion, gender equity, all of those, gender identity. Those conversations can stop a whole class in a second. They can break down a department meeting. You know, folks can come at each other, not intentionally, but not understanding how they're traumatizing their colleagues or their students. And how do we then listen to each other? And I think we're missing some of that. So we're stepping out there and getting it started.
So if you can answer this, Dr. Cox, what do you feel like are the greatest barriers for you right now in trying to accomplish your task? If you're willing to share that.
I think money certainly is an issue, right? I don't think that any of our agencies or institutions have enough money to do all the work or to hire all the people we need to do all the work that's required. So I would say money is one. Two is, we are fighting, I feel like I'm going to say we, it's collective, we are fighting a battle of inclusion. So as I was getting dressed this morning and recognizing, it's Pride Month, Pride Week, all activities around Pride, and then the cameras switch to Florida, right? And how they're banning folks from talking about the LGBT community. And it's not just Florida that's banning things, I mean, they've stepped way out there, but there are other places. And so I feel like there's a political climate that sort of keeps folks from stepping into spaces or wanting to learn or engage or have conversations about some of these issues around inclusion and belonging. And so it makes the job harder. It makes it much harder. I was so excited to see that there is this commission in North Carolina, knowing that there have been issues around our LGBTQ community, our transgender community, issues about race and the way forward, right? What do we do? So I recognize that that makes my job harder. I've got to make sure that I am being inclusive. I sat on a panel not long ago, and the first question that came up was about why aren't there more conservative faculty members in your institution? I don't take a poll on who's conservative and who is not, who's liberal. That's not where I'm going, but that is certainly the way folks think, and that's hard to have some of those conversations without folks wanting to get into a fight. So I would say those are probably some of the barriers that I'm facing. And I think now it's become a little bit harder now that we are not face to face, right? The remote workforce, while it's been good in many ways, it has allowed folks to not engage in conversations in the way that we used to, right? It's easy to hide behind the Zoom screen. Right. And I'm sure all of you have been in meetings where you've been bombed, Zoom bombed. Right. So.
Lydia.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Secretary. Hello, Dr. Cox. Thank you for your presentation. Really informative and interesting. I'm a law professor at North Carolina Central, and I do a lot of my scholarship around LGBTQ rights. And you're exactly right. I mean, there's too much to write about, really. But I wanted to tell you two things. One of my colleagues, David Green, his scholarship that he's working on this summer is around students, particularly Black students in the classroom, and how they deal with the kind of professors who are offensive, intentionally and non-intentionally. And some of the he's of course trying to balance free speech, but also with, boundary. And part of his intention, I think, is to then present this article to our accrediting, the accreditors from the law schools at the AELS, because they have, within the last 2 years, issued new standards around schools amping up diversity and inclusion. And so he wants to be able to present that as part of that. So I'll try to remember when that's out to get it to you. I think you'd find it really interesting.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And the other thing was, I came across this article when we were at the law school talking about critical race theory a couple months ago. And it was an article, actually it's a policy piece called Critical Social Justice in the UNC System. And this is an article, this is a policy piece that was put out by the James Martin Center in Raleigh, so kind of a conservative. Anyway, the whole point of this piece is to, the executive summary kind of downplays not just critical race theory, but in fact, equity and inclusion at all of the universities across the system. And it's really astounding and unbelievable, really, the recommendations that this center is making. And just, as to your point, why do we even have DEI is essentially why this policy piece is out there.
Right.
So I'm not even sure who commissioned it. I'm not sure who it's gone to, but I just thought I'm sure you're aware of it. If you're not, I'll shoot you a link to it. It's just, it's kind of the counterpoint of everything I know that everyone on this commission believes in. So, but again, thank you. Thanks for your work.
Yes, and I was having a good day till you brought up the Barton Center.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Yes, I get those articles sent to me regularly, and it's astounding to me what people actually choose to write without the research, without some of this and some of it that is specific to UNC Chapel Hill is written by folks who have never touched a foot at the institution nor asked a question. And it's so if you had to add what else is hard to my job, add that. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments for Dr. Cox? Well, Dr. Cox, thank you so much for being with us. And, I hope that you will consider this, excuse me, this commission a resource. It is an advisory board that advises the governor, it was developed through executive order and really, looks at these issues, advises the Office of State Human Resources as well as our department, which is the Department of Administration, in areas, things like procurement, for example, and ensuring equity in that sort of space. So they have really looked at a broad swath of issues and touched on a lot of things. So don't hesitate to reach out if we can ever be of service to you.
I appreciate it. And again, thank you for inviting me, and feel free to call me back at any time. I appreciate it. All right.
Thank you for your service. And you're welcome to stay on, but I know you probably have a really busy schedule. So
on to the next thing.
That's right. Okay. Well, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. So before we move into some discussion about our way forward and some other announcements, based on the two presentations we have today, I just want to give you all, the members, the space to, if there's anything else that anybody wants to add or have comments about or discussion, I want to give us the space to do that. Paula, you've been quieter today than any meeting you've ever been in. So if you have anything to add, I want to give the space at this point for people to do that.
I was having some connectivity problems, but they're solved, so that's good. So I caught most of it.
Good deal. All right. Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Dean Reimer, for recommending Dr. Cox. Appreciate that recommendation.
Thank you.
That was interesting. And Alicia, thank you for what you added also regarding what you guys are doing at ECU. Okay, so Evan and I are going we want to engage in some discussion with you. We talked to the governor's office about the work of the commission, went back again to sort of our charter, if you will, the executive order. And I know you all probably get tired of me revisiting that, but it's the lawyer in me that always goes back to, what was our establishing document and what was our mission. And I'm not going to go through all that again because I know I've gone through it with you all several times, but excuse me, you may recall that there was a chunk of that executive order that made assignments to the Office of State Human Resources. And as a reminder, also this came out early in Governor Cooper's administration. And then another chunk that talked about some assignments for the Department of Administration, primarily in the procurement space and ensuring equity and inclusion in the procurement space. And we've previously had Nancy I think at our last meeting or the meeting before, did an overview of, going point by point with the work that OSHR has done, addressing those specific things in the executive order. And then we had David O'Neill from the state's chief procurement officer go through point by point the things in there that related to procurement and where we are with those. And the great news is that the bulk of those things have been tackled and accomplished, but there's always room for improvement. And so work continues in all of those areas. But the specific tasks in there have largely been accomplished now. You all also had an initial report that provided various recommendations. Many of those have been addressed, and we've gone through those as Nancy has done. She always does a great presentation on the work of both OSHR and the administration in terms of new executive orders and that kind of thing. Not everything on that recommendation list has been accomplished either. But our thought now in terms of the work of the board, because we surveyed you guys, we've had a couple of meetings trying to sort of gin up what your interests are, whether you have other big concerns and that kind of thing. And so our thought is that we may well be at a place now where the work of this board should continue, but where we could do what many other boards do, and that is meet on a quarterly basis. And then as needed, as big issues arise where, either you all initiate with us because you see something in the press or something that comes out that you're concerned about. And so you all initiate with us that, we need to meet and talk about this particular issue if it's not, on a regularly scheduled quarterly meeting, but that we would move outside of that, we would move to quarterly meetings and then provide you all with, in advance of those meetings, issues that have come up that we're aware of, the things that we want to talk about, and so you can be prepared to give your advice and counsel on those particular issues. So this is an idea that we've just, kind of been talking about that we wanted to put before you all today to get your thoughts and feedback on that. Doesn't have to be that route, but we've just kind of been trying to figure out, okay, where do we go next with the Commission on Inclusion? And so, Evan, let me give you the space first to add to what I have put out there, and then we'll open it up to all of you for reaction to that.
Thank you, Secretary. And not too much to add. You definitely spoke to a lot of what we spoke to. But I just recall a few meetings back when we kind of did the 2 breakout sessions and being able to have the conversation about some of you all's experience as members on the commission. I think one of the things that stuck with me was actually something that Alicia said, was that ability to respond to things as they happen. And, trying to balance, the number of meetings and trying to do things in between those meetings and keeping up what's happening in our state, but while also making sure while we're in the meeting, we're able to have good, robust conversation about those things, getting your expertise and being able to come back and tell the state how to look at something or how to navigate something. And I feel with, and I agree with Secretary, by having the quarterly meetings, it gives us time to find out what is happening across the state. Let that sit. There's sometimes where things are evolving from day to day, and we may not even be in a place to understand how to have the conversations around it. But by having some of that space in between the time, seeing how things happen and evolve across the state, then coming back to this space and being able to have a discussion and then work with you all on how the state can do better at navigating that, I think would be great. And then to Secretary's point of if there are things that you all see happening that needs to be highlighted, it's, reaching out to myself, reaching out to Jordan and saying, hey, have you all been keeping up with this? Are you all aware of this? Is this something that the Commission on Inclusion should have a conversation about? And then being able to call those meetings kind of ad hoc. And so agree with Secretary of kind of where we are and where we can go and how we can better utilize the knowledge that you all have and coming back with us so that we can figure out how to better navigate state government.
The floor is open for discussion. Dean Reimer.
Yeah, I think that really makes sense. You know, when we started, I thought it was quarterly, but I might be wrong. But you know, one of my concerns is, and I raised it at the last meeting, is whether we're being sufficiently helpful to you. And I do think that if we had quarterly meetings, our attendance might be better, and we might be able to provide more help just on that basis alone. So I think you're going in the right direction, but I do really want to make sure that we're being of use to you and not just, you know, I mean, having been in, you know, in a position where I have a lot of committees, I don't want us to just be another committee that you have to manage, all of your team.
Lydia.
Yeah, I agree with Dean Reimer. As she said, I think we did start out quarterly. I do think that these monthly meetings have been, as we've gotten to know you better and the staff, and as we've kind of just kind of regroup, they've been really helpful. But no, I think quarterly is perfectly fine, especially with the ability to send out a quick survey or get some feedback about something, which we have done, you know, in the past. When we've had something come up, someone will send it out, we'll all email immediately and get it taken care of. And again, and I also echo Dean Reimer's comment that use us as you need to, however we can be helpful. You know, that's what we're here for, and I'm happy to help, as I know others are, and in any way that we can to be of help.
Thank you. Paula?
Yeah, I would agree. I think quarterly meetings, I think with the pandemic, a lot of groups ended up with shorter monthly meetings, and there's a little bit of fatigue, and I suspect that has been stated. That's why the attendance has fallen off a little bit. I missed the last meeting and apologize. I didn't realize it was virtual, but and then with regard to the structure of the meetings, I think the subcommittees are real helpful in the beginning. I did feel that it stifled my input a little bit in that once I volunteered for the purchase and contracting, I really wasn't able to provide much input in the other sections. And maybe if we get back to in-person meetings, and in light of the fact that a lot of the initial work has been done, we might be able to structure the meetings in a more open format so you don't get shuffled off into one subcommittee. And but overall, I just echo what's been said. Anything I can do to help, I'm happy to, and I look forward to getting back to in-person meetings.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Lord knows I'm looking forward to getting back to it. And we're slowly starting to transition. My immediate staff is all in the office with me and have been for the last year. So we have lots of in-person meetings, and there's no question for me that I feel like we're a lot more productive when we are in person, and can sometimes break bread even together and share space. So Andrew or Glenda, do either of you have anything you want to add?
I'm in agreement with what folks are saying. I think quarterly is great from an HR perspective. It's good to hear from y'all. We do try to think, as Nancy says, everything diversity and inclusion, equality and equity in every policy we're putting out now. We're very, very focused on that. You know, we didn't bring up, but we did mention we just got out the new sign-on and retention bonus policy, and we have throughout there, folks pay attention, even in one-time bonuses, pay attention to when you're giving it to one person over another and what the impact could be. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
Thank you, Glenda.
I share the sense that this is great direction. One of the things that, and this is a little ancillary, but one of the things that I think about as it relates to when we talk about state government, I mean, I think that because of your leadership and because of the governor's leadership, we've made a huge amount of progress within the areas under our control, under the governor's and your control. There's a pretty big gap in other parts of state government as it relates to these issues of concern. And I know that there are some role challenges, but it might be interesting to think about how we could draw a contrast appropriately.
That's a good idea.
Because there's just, I mean, there's just there are parts of state government that don't even include sex as a protected class. And so there might be opportunities. I understand their challenges.
Thank you for that. That might be a good intern project, Evan, is what I'm thinking. We have a couple of interns on right now. I have 2 interns in the secretary's office, and they're both on. Ladies, before we close out, why don't you guys go ahead? Paige, open your mic and introduce yourself real quick.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Paige Freeman. I'm a rising senior at UNC Charlotte, and this summer I'm interning at the Secretary's office as a policy cohesion and improvement intern. It's only been a few weeks, but it's been a really exciting few weeks. I'm really grateful to be here.
Ning?
Hi, my name is Ning. I'm a rising junior at Carolina, double majoring in political science and sociology. And I'm also an intern here, and I'm looking forward to a great summer. And I've already had a great couple.
Thank you, ladies. Okay, Alicia, do you have anything to add before? I'm going to ask Evan if we've got other announcements, but before I close out this part of the conversation. Okay. All right, great. Evan, are there any other, oh, I'm sorry, Lydia.
Yeah, Secretary, I wanted to say something real quick. It's unrelated to what we've been talking about. I wasn't sure if I should say it now because it sounds like we're getting ready to close out.
Yes, absolutely. I was going to give you all the space to make any announcements that you have, but now's a good time. Go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to say, for those that may not know, on Friday, there was a decision by Judge Biggs. She's I guess it's a Fourth Circuit decision. In any event, it was in favor of the transgender folks who were suing the state health plan in trying to have coverage. And I believe the order immediately reinstated that coverage, even perhaps during the time of any kind of an appeal. But anyway, a really good decision came out Friday for those that didn't know. So.
Thank you, Lydia. Our general counsel brought that up in the meeting this week with us as well. It is big news.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I was not aware of that.
Will that stand now, Lydia, or will it be contested?
I have a feeling it'll be appealed. But the question is, I mean, she said immediately start offering those benefits. I hope those benefits will still be able to be offered, even if it does get appealed.
Yeah.
I think it was a Fourth Circuit decision. I might be wrong. Do you know, Andrew, is Judge Biggs on the Fourth Circuit, or is she a district court judge?
I was thinking she was on the Fourth Circuit, but I don't know 100% that to be.
Yeah, I think
correct.
she is, but it still could mean they might appeal for like an en banc kind of hearing, which means have the whole court hear it. And if they appeal to the Supreme Court, of course, that would take at least a year or two. But I'm sure they're not done appealing, but it's a great result wherever it is right now.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I just added the link to the chat, and once Jordan finishes out the minutes and everything, we'll make sure you all get access. It's just an article I just pulled up, but
Thank you.
I remember seeing it this week.
Does anybody else have any announcements to share of any kind? Any information to share for the good of the group?
And I'm sorry, I just noticed it is a district court opinion. So I just Middle District of North Carolina. So that means it probably will be appealed to the circuit and then on up. But in any event, good. So
yeah. Okay, Evan, any other announcements that I have forgotten?
The only thing, I did send an email or 2 emails for the OSHR events that are happening that Nancy spoke to. So the one today, you may have about 30 more minutes to jump on, and then the one next week for Juneteenth. Also, you may have remembered, I sent out a schedule reservation link that kind of repeated every other month as we were having these meetings. Just be aware you'll receive a cancellation for all of those as we plan for the quarterly meetings. And so I'll work with Jordan on my team. We'll cancel all of those, and then we'll get out new quarterly meetings. Right now, we're thinking about September and looking at the second Thursday, I think is what we said, Jordan. The second Thursday in September. Ideally, we may be at a space to operate in person. And so we'll be planning and coordinating that over the next few months, and you'll hear from us soon. But I think that is all I have. Give you all time to hop onto that other event if you want to.
Thanks. Thanks, Evan.
So, excuse me. Thank you all for your service. One other quick question, and this is something I'm starting to ask all of our boards and commissions. We regularly send out information that is just for your situational awareness. We usually do that through Jordan or Evan. If you are not getting any emails from Jordan on random things like executive orders, or I don't know what your latest one was, Jordan, that you've sent out, but please let us know, because you should be getting that. As a member, you should be getting all of those. And sometimes you may see it and go, what in the world are they sending me this for? But we err on the side of trying to share more rather than less and get that out to board members. And our hope is that you're then going to share that with somebody else. So when you get that, even if you're not interested, if you know of somebody else, you have stakeholder groups that you think may be able to benefit from that information, please share that out. That's why we're sending it to you. It's not just for you to know and hold it, but for you to share with others as a member of the commission. We have to use our commission members as force multipliers in getting info out to communities in North Carolina. So really appreciate. And if you're not getting them, like I said, email. You would have an email from Jordan for this meeting. Respond back to that email and let her know that you don't seem to be getting anything. Do a search for Jordan Hannah in your inbox and see what sort of emails you're getting from her, and you'll know immediately if you're on the list. If all you're getting are meeting invites, then you're not on the list to get all these other things. So, all right. Does anybody have any questions for me? Super. Then thank you for being with us. Thank you for your continued service. We are looking for some additional members. So if you also know of people who would be excellent, Andrew might enjoy having another male perspective on the board. So if you all know of some good folks, we love diversity. Please share that with Evan or myself, any recommendations that you have. We have a few folks in mind, but would love your input as well on people you think would be good for this particular commission. Thank you all. We appreciate you so much.